Hey guys, Vesemir, and today we're back in with Medieval 2 Total War. Or at least we would be, but sadly, I recently had to reinstall Windows, which also meant reinstalling all of my games. Now this is perfectly fine, because normally what almost every game does is have your save files saved in My Documents. I also thought this was the case with Medieval 2, but sadly it isn't. So when all my games were deleted, my save files for Medieval 2 were also gone. So sadly that means I can't continue on with this campaign, but that's okay, because I found the next best thing. So I tried to recreate the in-game map as best as I could here. And this is our faction. This is the Turks, as you can see. I've pretty much made everything. I've taken over green. And here are all the different other factions. So we still have Hungary, Poland, Russia, Denmark, the Holy Roman Empire, France, England, Portugal, Spain, and the Moors. And also Egypt down here. Now, previous time we took over pretty much all the major cities of the Egyptians. So as far as I can remember, they only had two very smaller cities left. And I kind of want to describe as to what I would do in the next few parts. So first up, what we would do is take care of Milan. Milan only had like two more cities left, I believe, and I was already almost. They only had two more cities left, so taking out them wouldn't have been all that hard. Same with Egypt, they really don't have anything left, so all I'd have to do is just send our army down there to mop them both up. It's also the little settlement here that I forgot to take out, so I would have taken that one out too. And at that point my empire would have grown quite large already, which is good. And as you can see, there's only like a few factions left. And some of these factions have also taken out another faction already. Like for example, England would have most probably taken out Scotland at this point, because in this point in the game, they usually already have. So you might be thinking that I'd be thinking of expanding more into mainland Europe, but that's not the case. Now you might have noticed that in the previous parts, I was actually building a bunch of archers on this side. That's because of the Mongol invasion. So I think I was about 10-15 turns away from the Mongols invading. Now the Mongols can invade from different spaces. See, the Mongols can invade from about 3 points here. They can either invade from the top part. Now, this invasion here would have probably been the easiest for me, because then they would have just gone over here, smashed up Russia a bit, as well as with Hungary, and taken them over completely. But then that would have been a problem later, because at that point, they would have probably become the second biggest faction very, very quickly. Because what happens with the Mongols is, they invade with a stack of 8 incredibly high quality armies. And these guys have like the best cavalry in the world, really good Mongol infantry that is also like archers and stuff, together with rocket launchers. Not modern day rocket launchers, of course, but just like dudes holding out these weird artillery weapons, which means that they can pretty much just like batter down a gate very quickly. So yeah, these guys are not a force you want to mess with. They are without doubt one of the biggest problems for any Total War player when playing this campaign. It's also one of the main reasons why I wanted to play with the Turks, because you're very close to the Mongols, so that gives you a bit of an extra challenge. If they went over here, that would have been a bit more of a problem, because these castles aren't really all that well defended. And what would happen pretty much is they would take over this remaining area here. So we could have pretty much assumed that they would have taken this one over very quickly here. What the Mongols do is kind of interesting, actually. When they take over a settlement, they don't necessarily take it over. They might just like make it a rebel place, like sack it and leave rebels in charge. And it happens with the first few settlements that they take. They actually go for a select few settlements, and when they take those over, that's when they begin to settle, which means they'll actually be a constant threat. So them just taking over a few smaller cities, that's okay. I think Aleppo and I'm not sure, is it Jerusalem? Like those big major cities, that's the ones where they actually try to settle it themselves. And if they do, then you've got a bit of a problem, because then they can be an incredibly powerful and dangerous faction. So if they got to here, that would have been a huge game-changing problem. But if them just taking over these few spots here, that's not the biggest thing in the world. And the way to defeat the Mongols is by not fighting them in the open field. You might have noticed that I had like a bunch of archers in all of these cities here. You want to weaken them as much as you can. And not just them specifically, you want to weaken their infantry. Because without infantry, you can't really take over a city. And, you know, like a 12 stack does sound incredibly terrifying. It's like 8 stacks first, and then I think a few turns later, another 4 stacks. But without infantry, they can't really do that much anymore. So I would have taken out their infantry with the archers and everything, and just trying to hold out as much as possible. The goal isn't really to take out the Mongol armies, the goal is to weaken them, and slowly but surely take care of them that way. They might have like taken over maybe this side, all the way over here too, but I'm pretty sure I could have stopped them at these 4 major cities, especially since these are like way more higher built up than these cities here are. So I think I would have been able to fight them off quite well if they started either here or here. But with here, it would have been like a lot more losses, because at that point, you could have pretty much guaranteed they would go over here, and it would actually be a huge problem, because they could like pretty much just freely walk over here and try and take out these large cities. And if you did take these ones out, I think they might have settled, and in which case I would have had a huge problem. So yeah, the Mongols are 100% the biggest threat in this game. Biggest threat in the game, and arguably the one chance that I had of still losing this game, because at this point you can see that I'm pretty much dominating anyway. It's not really hard to win a total war game, especially not Medieval 2, but the Mongols are definitely something that will give you a lot of trouble, especially when you're just beginning. But let's say the Mongols are defeated, right? I managed to take them out because they started over here, and you know, there's always a chance they might start over here, but I really didn't assume that. Because most of the time from when I've played, they always tend to go here or here, never really here. So I would have assumed really they would have gone over here and I would have been able to fight them back, and slowly but surely over the turns take over all these places too. Now once the Mongols would have been dealt with, and this might have taken a very long time actually, but once they've been dealt with, I would have focused back on Europe. And well, at this point no one in Europe could really challenge me, so as slowly as the turns go by and everything, and as the parts went by, I'd be taking out more and more. And before you know it, pretty much the entire map would have been mine. But when the entire map of Medieval 2 is yours, it's not necessarily the end of the game yet, because there's still more to it. See, what you can also do, actually, after a certain amount of turns, and this is very, very late, you only have to take over 45 cities to win the long campaign. So by pretty much, like, by taking over maybe a quarter of the map, or 1/3 of the map, you've pretty much already won anyway. If you wait long enough, 3 more events will happen. One, the plague would happen. The plague basically just kills off, like, massive amounts of your population. You really can't do all that much about it, you just have to wait. And especially for larger empires, you're going to earn a lot less money. So that would have been hard if I were still like waging war in Europe. If the plague suddenly hit, then I would have had a problem, because that would have just made waging war a lot harder, because then I'd really have to stop building stuff up in other parts of the world. Furthermore, what then also happens is, you might notice on this side, there's still the Americas left. So yes, after the plague, and I think like we're actually kind of late in the game, you can start traveling to America, and over there you still have the Aztec faction. Now, taking over, this is actually a really cool, like a little extra thing, because the units that you'll fight in these parts are units that you won't really find anywhere else in the game. They really all have like special outfits, and they also look really cool. So taking out these few rebel settlements wouldn't have been all that difficult. And as for the Aztecs, they do have like a bunch of armies, but you know, when you have pretty much the entire world, except for these few patches of land, then you can just build up a massive army and just send them over with boats. And it would have been a cool few battles to fight, but I don't think it would have been hard ones by any stretch of the imagination. Especially seeing as at this point in the game you do actually unlock gunpowder units, and it would have pretty much just like made mincemeat out of these guys, so it wouldn't have been really hard to fight them. At that point, there's only one more event that would happen, which is the Timurids, which just like the Mongols can come from this side, and they're like the Mongols but stronger pretty much. They're pretty much the final challenge the game will throw at you if you actually manage to wait that long and still play through the game. And what they basically are is the Mongols, but then with gunpowder units, so they're really, really strong, and they also have elephants with cannons. The same strategy that worked with the Mongols also work on these guys. You don't fight them in open battles, you just have to fight them in the cities and in defensive battles, and just slowly weaken them like that and take them out. So yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to do with Medieval 2 Total War. I'm sad to see I didn't actually have the time to do all of it. But I think in the first few parts it already snowballed really, really hard. I expected, in the beginning I thought I would have a harder time with it than I actually did. And I think like a few parts inwards it was already pretty obvious that I was like vastly doing better than the AI. At that point I could just pretty much steamroll them. I would have really loved to find out the Mongols, seeing as they would have been the biggest threat by far. I wanted to see how I would fare against them, but sadly, seeing as I lost my save file, it's not really an option. I want to thank you guys for watching anyway, those of you who watched throughout it all. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry I couldn't like actually finish it, I really wanted to, but sometimes it's just the way it goes. So, thank you for joining me on this MS Paint adventure. This has been Medieval 2 Total War on very hard difficulty, and I'll see you all next time.